my channel. Today we are back with a book video. I have read, so the last book video I did was January to May, and I do believe there was 12 books. Now we have 13. So obviously isn't 13 here. I have read 3 audiobooks this year, this time. It's my first time ever reading an audiobook. Not my favorite. I think audiobooks are good if you know the author and the author is the one narrating it. We're gonna get into that, but this is my little roundup of all the books I've read from May till today, which is like the end of August. So yeah, we're gonna start. I have rated 4 books 5 stars in those few months. So that is considerably better than the previous time I filmed this. So that's good. A win is a win. I'm actually gonna start with the book I just finished because in my opinion, this was the best book by far out of all of them. So this book is called Pity Party by Daisy Buchanan. I rated this a 5-star. It was so good. It had me laughing my head off, like at little points, and I underlined so much. Let me just see if I can find one of the things I underlined. The trouble is that I know myself all too well. Very, very good. So no spoilers, but the backstory is her partner, her husband, dies in a tragic boat accident, and it's all just, it's not like the typical story you would expect. It's really not the typical story you'd expect, but it's all about how she's perceived as the widow, but actually she wasn't. That's what I'm gonna say. But it was so good. It felt like a comfort read, and it also felt like a comedy at the same time, which was really nice. I haven't read a book like that in years, honestly. When I did my last video, because it was what I was in the process of reading, was Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. Now I did like this. However, I only rated it 2 stars because the storyline just wasn't it for me, but it was basically about how the media is toxic in terms of these really gruesome cases, i.e. this is about a child and something bad happens to them. That's what I'm gonna say because I don't really want to say it. And I feel like I'd get demonetized, even though I'm not even monetized right now, but whatever. Yeah, I read it 2 stars. I do think the commentary on society as a whole was very interesting, but I rate books based on how I enjoy them and how I feel like they're gonna affect me moving on from reading them. Will I ever think about them again? Or did the lines in it have any kind of impact on me? And this one just didn't, unfortunately. The next one I read was A Court of Silver Flames. Now this was the final in the ACOTAR series and it was so good. I was bawling my eyes out, but I actually read it on the way to Seoul in Korea with Stu, so I left it on the plane. But it basically just rounded up everything that had happened in ACOTAR. I definitely would recommend that series to everyone. It's such like a good intro to fantasy. It's not too like woo-woo. I guess it kind of is, but it's so good. Like the love story between Nessa and Cassian. I just love, and Elaine and I don't know, but so good. I was on the plane bawling my eyes out in floods of tears while finishing it. So yeah, I would highly recommend. I did rate that a 5-star as well. I would actually say that that was the best one out of all of the ACOTAR books. The next one I read was The Couple at Number 9 by Claire Douglas. I actually gave this to a friend at work, so I don't have this one on me, but I'm gonna get Stu to put a little picture of it in here. And I really did enjoy this book. However, I only rated it 4 stars just because even though it was very good, I'm very picky with thrillers because I can just get wrapped up in them and think they're a 5-star because I enjoy reading them so much because I'm like, oh my God, what's happening next? Oh my God, I can't stop. But it wasn't perfect, you know? I will never think about the book again. If you ask me what happened in that book right now, I'd be like, gun to my head, could not tell you. So I probably actually, looking back, I'd probably rate like a 3 now. The next book I also don't have on me, but I'm gonna get Stu to put a little picture of it here. It's called Everything I Know About Love. Now I adored this book. This book was so good, but I did only rate it 3 stars because this is the first audiobook I ever read. Now I enjoyed it because I know Dolly Alderton's voice, so I did still feel a connection. But I'll be honest, I struggle to connect with audiobooks. It's something about them, it just feels like listening to a podcast. And podcast to me is something I put on either in the background when I'm working and like doing emails and like drafting stuff, or I put it on to run, so it doesn't feel as like, I don't know, something missing. It's nothing like sitting down with a good book, you know. But that book was about Dolly's experience growing up and everything she's learned along the way about love, not just in relationships, but also in familial love and friendship love and just things that you love as well. So that was very good. There's some good quotes in it too, which I did like. The next one I rated 5 stars. I actually posted to my mum. So I don't have that one here. So again, please put a picture here too. But it was so good. I really enjoyed this one. I rated 5 stars because I haven't read a romance like this before. I felt so connected to the characters. Everyone was just, it felt so real. Even though the storyline's a bit mental, it just felt so like, it was perfect. It was a perfect little love story. So the backstory of this one, not too much of a spoiler, is her aunt passes away, and she was very close to her aunt, and her aunt left her apartment. And so when she goes into this apartment, she goes back in time every time she goes into it, and she actually meets someone back in time that she may or may not meet later on. And it's very cute, but that's giving nothing away because it doesn't take away from the storyline at all. So that was amazing. I did rate that 5 stars. The next one I have is the Atlas 6. I didn't really like this, and now I feel like, well, I want to know what's going to happen, so I feel like I should read the second and the third, but I didn't like this. Like, I didn't love it. I didn't want to pick it up. Every time I felt like I had to read it, I was like, oh, I don't want to read it. But I don't know if it was just because I was in a reading slump or I was reading it too slowly. I don't know. I rated this one 2 stars. The premise of this book is that 6 very talented magicians get brought into this little clique, but they get brought in by this man, and it's like work underneath this big like secret organization and to try and achieve some things, but it isn't what it seems. And 6 has to become 5. Say no more. The next one I have is Local Girl Missing, which again, I actually gave that to a friend at work, and that one is a really good thriller. But again, I just rated it 3 stars. It was good to read, was enjoyable, but nothing special. I find with thrillers, they're so good, and they're really good at like taking you out of like everyday stresses, even though they're a bit like messed up, but because they're so good and they're such a good distraction. But overall, they don't have like a lasting effect on you, which maybe is a bit messed up, but I'm just saying how I feel. The next one I read is this one. Now this is called Body Friend by Catherine Braybon. This is also by an Australian author. I do like to read books by Australian authors just because it's nice to read things that are set in Australia, but this one is actually set in Melbourne, which I have never been. So I couldn't relate 100%, but it did make me want to go to a swimming pool. And I did actually go swimming at like I think Lido's, something like that. And that was really fun. So it did encourage me in that sense. However, this is about a woman that has chronic health issues, and it's kind of mundane and repetitive, and it is just like what that is like, you know, like it does feel very real. You feel like you are in that world, but it just was so boring. Like the story is very boring. I think this book would be better for people that are very deep in terms of their books and like they think about everything so like metaphorically, and not me. I like to enjoy what I'm reading, and I rated this 2 stars because I did like the meaning behind it as someone that does, like I have psoriasis, which is considered a chronic illness, things like that. So yeah. Also, how good is my top? I don't think I showed it enough. The next book I rated 1 stars. It was Greta and Valden. Now this book is getting rave reviews everywhere, and I think it's because I listened to it on audiobook that I didn't enjoy it, but it was also set kind of here, there, everywhere. Like it was in Salta in Argentina, which I've been. It was in Seoul, it was in New Zealand, like it was all different places, which was interesting because I have been to all these places. So I was like, oh, this is so fun. But like the actual storyline, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And I think it's because 1, it was audiobook, and 2, it took me ages to finish it. So like I read like 3 books in between still listening to this one. So I think it kind of makes sense why I didn't enjoy it. The next one was called Conversations on Love. Now this one, I can't remember who it was by. I also listened to this one on audiobook, but I actually rated it 4 stars because the quotes in it were just surreal. The way it was written was amazing. Basically, the author interviewed different people from different walks of life, different industries, different eras in her life as well, and just asked them about how they experience love and what their experiences in love are and things like that. And just the different stories was amazing. There was one story about one of her best friends that sadly lost her little sister, and just I was bawling. Like, I was actually having to hold tears in because I listened to it while I was at work. I was having to hold the tears in. It was just so moving, so real. And yeah, I really recommend that audiobook to anyone that's looking for one. The next one I rated 3 stars. I'll be honest, I'm a bit sad I rated it 3 stars. I was expecting a little bit more. It's called If You Live to 100, You Might As Well Be Happy by Ri Kun-hoo. I might have said that wrong. But he is a South Korean author. He is actually, I think he was 75 at the time of writing this. I think he's like 85 now or something like that. It's Lessons for a Long and Joyful Life. It was actually translated by a family friend, which I thought was really nice, very moving. But it's following along his journey and all the lessons he's learnt up to this age, which is obviously a wise old age, and just the things he's learnt. So he is a psychologist back in Seoul, and he's been poor, he's been rich, he's been in prison for fighting like the injustice back in Seoul years and years ago. And it was so good. Like, there was so much that I underlined. Let me see if I can find one thing. Money exists for our freedom, but we must not compromise our freedom for the sake of money. Don't be afraid of living simply or simpler. Learning to embrace a simple life can set you free in old age. I aspire for the life of existence, not possession. So yeah, I did really enjoy it. I do think it was very good. I actually read most of this while camping, which I thought was really nice as well. But it was only 3 stars. It was still very good. It was my first translated non-fiction, which I thought was interesting. I would like to read a few more as well, because I do think it's, if you're only reading fiction from people that speak English, you're not really, non-fiction, you're not really learning too much, because I love fiction translated books, especially by Japanese or Korean authors. But there's something about only reading or listening to non-fiction by English speaking people that I feel like is kind of stupid, because we really weren't like the be all and end all. Like, English people are kind of, a lot of us are bad vibes, but basically I just feel like it's to open your horizons and open your eyes. And as someone that loves to travel, I feel like I learned so many lessons from people overseas. I live overseas myself now too, but obviously English speaking country. So yeah, so this is called The Sisters by Claire Douglas. I finished this one just before reading Pity Party, and I also rated this 5 stars. So I had 2 5 stars in a row, which is a good feeling. We love that. This was so good. Like, for me to rate a thriller a 5 star, I used to always do it because they were enjoyable, but now it's very, very rare. So the premise of this was, I have to not read the story because the shocks are just insane. So a girl tragically has an argument with her twin sister while they're driving. And unfortunately, she gets into a car accident and everyone survives except the sister. And she's obviously living with that guilt. She's had so many issues. Long story short, she makes friends with someone on the street who turns out also to be a twin. And she ends up getting really close. They end up moving in together. The twin also lives with them and some other people. She's very wealthy, blah, blah, whatever. And so much stuff happens. It's crazy. Highly recommend. And then I just thought, like I did in the last video, I'll show you what I'm reading now. Instagram chose this one. So if you do like books and you like my style of content, I recommend following me on Instagram, Drew McCormick _. But this one I'm reading right now by Leanne Morality. Moriarty. But she's a really good author. She's very, very famous. I've read one of her books before and it was so good. So I hope I can get into this, but for some reason, when I've read 2 5 stars in a row, especially, I'm on like a reader's like depression. Like I'm just like, oh, nothing will be as good, you know? So yeah, we're gonna read this now. I'm just gonna read you the blurb because I don't know what's happening in this. Cecilia Fitzpatrick, devoted mother and successful Tupperware consultant, has found a letter from her husband to be opened only in the event of my death. But Cecilia's husband isn't dead, he's on a business trip. And when she questions him about the letter on the phone, Cecilia senses something she hasn't experienced before. John Paul is lying. We all have secrets, but not like this. I'd open the letter. I wouldn't have even called. I'd open the letter. The hell? But yeah, I'm very excited to read this. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bells if you do like my content. And I will see you next week. Bye.